Welcome to this chat with Doug Leeder, outgoing chair of the Bay of Plenty Regional Council after the upcoming local body elections. Doug has been chair of the Regional Council for 12 years and has led the Regional Sector Forum within Local Government New Zealand. He has also had 2 decades of corporate government experience within the dairy industry, as well as a director on the Port of Tauranga. In this interview, Doug shares his perspectives on the future of local government, his thoughts on the amalgamation of councils in the Bay of Plenty, what should happen to Quayside if regional councils should no longer exist, and his parting wisdom for future mayors, chairs and councillors in the upcoming local body elections. Welcome to the conversation, Chairman Doug Leeder. So cool. Thank you very much for meeting us today, Doug. Not only are you stepping down, but also Paula and Jane are also stepping down as well. What are your thoughts on the risk of a lot of institutional knowledge leaving the Regional Council ahead of a mountain of change that's going to hit the sector?
Oh, look, Matt, it's got to be a big concern. Those two ladies, both Jane and Paula, come to council with a lot of institutional knowledge. They've both been employed by local government previously before they took up their governance roles here, and they have both been stellar contributors in terms of the governance role at council here. So yes, it will be a loss. It's not easy to replace those two ladies, who I think they must have about 15 years experience here in the council. And I just trust and hope that some aspiring people who will make the governance table here can bring at least the ability to step up over a period of time to the level of performance that those two ladies had.
So you've had a lot of experience in the private sector around reform and other things. What tips would you give to the local government sector approaching likely reforms, either from their communities or what's been pushed down by government?
Yes, well, 2 points. Firstly, I think it's a matter of when and not if, that there will be some approach to look at local government, both in terms of the functions and the structure, and that's driven by the Parliament. So that's the first point. And the second point is that communities' expectations and level of satisfactions with local government, you would have to say, is on the wane. The level of rate increases, double-digit rate increases year after year, is just not sustainable going forward. And communities will reach a point where they say is enough. They will express that satisfaction to the Parliament, and the Parliament will make the necessary announcements and approach in terms of what they want to do about it.
Okay.
It's hard.
It's very hard.
It's hard.
Yes. Well, just speaking of that change from government, there's a lot of talk around, obviously Shane Jones has made his comments, as well as Prime Minister and Minister of Local Government as well, talking around there's too much governance, as well as potentially what is the future of regional councils. What's your response to that?
You're right. Those announcements or pronouncements have come from senior level within Cabinet. The issue there is that ministers are reflecting the views of the wider community, and that's why they're essentially doing that. I think that as I said, the structure of local government hasn't changed in the last 35 years in any business, and local government is a business. I mean, the amount of money that we drag in, the expenditure we put out, you've got to say, in any business, you would revisit your structure and your operating ability over that time. Local government has struggled to do that. And I think there currently is little appetite to do that. So it's a matter of whether local government wants to accept the challenge themselves and do a strategic review and then go to the Parliament and say, well, can we have a discussion about the way forward? Or you sit back and say, never shall you challenge the autonomy of local government entities, and therein you run the risk of the Parliament, as they did in '89, saying this is the way it's going to be.
Quite right. So especially, as we know, people love to complain about their local government, their local councils, but try and take it away from them, and then you'll have a fight on your hands. There's proposals and discussions that are happening locally around amalgamation. What are your thoughts on either of that getting off the ground?
First point is that, yes, people like local communities, they like local deliveries, but I don't agree with the proposition that people think you're taking our assets away from us. So if you take the Three Waters debate, were they assets, or as Tim King, the Mayor of Tasman said, some of these are big liabilities. My view is that communities, in terms of those provision of core services, so we're talking about the two waters, potable water and wastewater, as long as it turns up at the tap in terms of potable water, and as long as it goes from the toilet facilities, that's what they're interested in. Because are they interested it has to be locally owned? I don't think so. That's a discussion local government has to have in terms of the best cost opportunity for those people. So that's the position from the community. And the second part of your question was?
It was around, will it ever get off the ground, the local proposals and discussions that are happening around amalgamation?
I'd like to think the answer to that would be yes, but I've got to say my experience here is no. I was researching the other day, and we have a paper in this organisation dated 2014 where we tried to have that discussion with the local authorities to say, in the interest of the ratepayers, the people who pay the money, is there a different vehicle that we can operate through that will deliver more cost efficiency and effectiveness to the ratepayers? Those issues we raised in 2014 are still on the table today in 2025.
So particularly in the Bay of Plenty, we face quite parochial communities, and maybe you're right, it's that fear of loss of control or being taken over by, and whether that fear is true or whether it's being fed with the right information. What are your sense of the appetite of both the mayors and the communities to take on this level of change?
Strategic positioning or repositioning of entities such as local government needs to be led by the mayors and the chief executives of the respective organisations. You cannot expect that those decisions are driven from the bottom up, because it can only be driven from the bottom up when the pain gets so bad in terms of exposure to double-digit rate rises, compounding, that people say something's wrong here. In my view, it's the responsibility of the elected members and the chief executives of those organisations to stand back, take a big strategic review of the operating environment they are in, and say, is there a better way forward that we can deliver that localism, because that's what people want. If something goes wrong in their community, they want a local person to turn up who's got the institutional knowledge of the geography and the issues, who's going to fix it. They don't want someone from, out of the district coming to do it. That is always available in some form of restructuring of how you deliver those services to people. But I think communities want localism delivered, but they also want the most cost-effective and efficient management system put in place to do that.
So with the RMA changes that are leading to align all the regional plans into one document, what are the likelihood of that leading to unitary authorities in the future?
You're right. Whether it's the RMA changes, which are significant, or it's national policy statements delivered by central government, these changes will affect more than just regional councils. It's going to affect all of local government. So local territorial authorities who think they're going to be not affected by this, they need to think again. Metros will be similar. Yes, there are 4 successful unitary authorities running in the country. You've got Tasman, Nelson, Marlborough and Tairāwhiti, which is Gisborne. And then you've got the Auckland one, which we'll leave out of the 4. Yes, they operate, but I'd suggest to you the scale in terms of the land mass that they control is a lot less than the regional council boundaries that we have. I don't think that it is a good scenario to fold into unitary authorities all the functions of regional councils. They are somewhat different. As you know, regional councils look after the land, water and air attributes of a region. So whereas metros and local authorities to a lesser degree look after the people, the parks and reserves and the facilities that people enjoy, whereas regional councils are a bit different. So whether or not they end up focusing on unitaries or there's some other form of structure available, but first of all, we've got to go through that analysis of what are the functions that we all deliver and where are those functions best positioned so you get the best delivery mechanism.
So the government's flagged that there might be some sort of environmental protection or at least the monitoring and regulation and enforcement may come through later RMA changes. So if there's potentially a separate environmental protection agency, would then that start to push the case more for more alignment, particularly around regional planning and having that with a group of decision makers within one organisation and one representative of the community?
Yes, you're right. There has been discussion about the EPA extending its brief to cover especially all those regulatory functions. And one of the criticisms or concerns of ministers in the Parliament is that within regional councils, and there's 14 of us, including the unitaries, you have different delivery and expectations from region to region. And they say, you're dealing with the same activity, but you cross one boundary and the rules are different. And I can understand that concern, and that's an issue that regional councils have to account for themselves. As to why there's differences within the regions. But that's one of the key drivers that ministers are saying, you need to explain to us why you're delivering this the manner in which you are. So.
Okay, so it was mentioned in Rotorua's proposal and their media following their discussions of wanting to encourage maybe an amalgamation or local government reform. What came up was around the investment income and that's obviously targeting Quayside. What are your thoughts on the future of Quayside, and with all this change around local government, what should we hold on to versus what change should we be open to?
Right, one of the things that I think I'm quite proud of what we've achieved here since I joined in 2013 is the growth in terms of the book size. So that's the fund under management in Quayside. So when I came in 2013, Quayside had a book value of, if you take out some of the lazy assets, like some land holdings, about $70 million. And I think the returns to the council at that time were circa about $12 million coming through. That book has now grown to nearly $600 million. The dividend coming to council each year this next financial year is $48 million. That is significant for the wider region. The regional council is but the custodian of those funds. Those funds are held on the benefit of ratepayers. And our current expectation of Quayside is that fund will be the start of an endowment fund for current and future generations that they can draw on. And in the current case, it's to subsidise rates and deliver a higher level of service than what we currently have got. I do not agree with those who think that local authorities or others looking across the fence with envy at the financial prudence of successive regional councils that they should have a share of that. The decision of how those funds are delivered or distributed sits with the regional council. Have a debate about that, but I think it's unreasonable that there are those out there who think they should get a share, either in terms of allocation or the council should just give them a chunk of money every year. They can do what they want to. At the end of the day, local authorities need to be accountable for their own financial management, and it's up to the regional council how they distribute those funds. I think those who have an expectation that they should get a share of Quayside is unreasonable. As I said, those funds are held on the benefit of all ratepayers from Waihi Beach through to Rotorua through to East Cape.
So let's run a thought experiment. Should Minister Shane Jones and others, their remit around abolishing regional councils, should that proceed, is it better off for Quayside to be split up, or maybe its shareholding to be discussed if the regional councils no longer exist?
Well, there's two scenarios there. One is you take the assets of Quayside at the time and you distribute them to whoever the successive organisations are. As I said, I don't think that's a smart move. And if you want to use an example, if you look at the beneficiaries of TECT, who receive a dividend from TECT each year, that's the ratepayers out there. If you ask them to split that up and give it to some other organisations, I know what the response would be. And I think one of the challenges for Quayside is to endeavour to promote and explain to the wider community what Quayside is. I mean, I'd have to say that I think if you poll the population or the community here in Tauranga, probably 95% of people wouldn't know what Quayside was. So there's an opportunity for them to actually step up and explain what they do and the funds they hold on behalf of communities. But that's probably a long journey. They have been very once removed from the public presentation in terms of their activities. It's always been done through the regional council. Okay. So let's move on to hot topics coming up for this local election. The election's only a couple of months away, and for the candidates that it's now open, nominations are now open. For those candidates, what do you think will be the hot topics for the election? Oh, I could imagine that different candidates will have different issues, and they're probably single issues, which I think is unwise. My advice to anybody coming in aspiring to be a councillor is do your due diligence. Get a copy of the annual plan, get a copy of the 10-year plan, and find what you're getting committed to in terms of forecast expenditure and revenue going forward. If you don't do that, how can you step into a governance role here and think you're going to change the world in your first term? Because you're not going to. You've got to comply with those to a large degree with both those documents. So that would be the first thing. The other one is come in with an open mind. One of the things I've said to our councillors here, and I must give credit to our councillors for the manner in which we operate as a governance. They've been very good. It's been a privilege to lead them. You might be elected by a certain constituency, but the moment you walk into that council room, you're representing the whole region. You cannot just say I'm elected by the residents of Matua or Otamotapai, and that's where it begins and ends. That's not what governance is about. The governance is having an understanding of all the activities of the regional council, the financial exposure, both pluses and minuses the regional council has, and having an understanding and being able to explain that to the wider audience of the Bay of Plenty region. And as an example, when I got chair, I expected that people elected from a constituency here in Tauranga took part in, as an example, river liaison schemes in the Eastern Bay of Plenty. They took part in Eastern Bay activities, whether it was Eastern Bay spatial planning and all that stuff. So they've got an understanding of the whole region. And conversely, the people in the Eastern Bay or Rotorua here were part of the public transport deliberations here in Tauranga as well. So it's a big expectation. Don't come in with a single view in terms of what you're going to change the world, because sadly you won't. And if you want to get change, it's a matter of convincing your peers. And in our case, there's 14 people around the table whom you have to convince of an idea, or the majority, to progress or get some change in terms of the way that we do business.
So basically, it's nonsense for a candidate to say, I don't know about that issue, because basically they should have been able to read the annual plan, or at least have an opinion on where the annual plan and 10-year plan sits on those key issues, because that's what the communities are having conversations with their local council on, basically.
Absolutely. And I think that the remuneration for councillors is sufficient, that the community should have a high expectation that you do your homework. If you take, for instance, our colleagues next door in Tauranga City Council here, the remuneration there is circa $100,000 a year. In the regional council here, it's about $65,000 a year. That is a fair bit of money, and the expectation from the community is you deliver your governance expectation and earn your remuneration. To just say I'm just going to concentrate on these things is not good governance.
So one of the big levers on the council is being able to set a direction and hold executives to account. And I think that comes to your point around people on a one issue, candidates that come in on a one issue, banging fists on table but not able to influence change. Do you have any tips for councillors to actually be able to influence that change with the council and with the executives?
So this gets to the core responsibility of governance, as you said, which is hold the chief executive and the executive within the organisation to account. And let's be candid, that is hard, especially when you walk into an organisation where you may not have a skill set to be able to question and get a really good understanding of many of the processes within this organisation. Whether it's engineering in terms of delivering rivers and drainage, R&M, or whether it's planning in terms of the planning documents and plan changes, whether it's biosecurity, those sort of things. You can't expect someone to come and have a comprehensive understanding of them all. But what you can expect amongst the elected, or should expect amongst the elected members, is the ability to step up to the plate and ask questions that people think might be technical, but essentially they're common sense questions, and seek some accountability, because generally, if it doesn't feel right, it's normally not right. And it's your ability to navigate the questioning to seek the accountability that's absolutely critical. You can't do it yourself, it's a collective. And I know that in local government they say you've only got one employee, it's the chief executive. Well, that's technically right, but that's not the way you get best performance out of organisations.
Okay. Look, we might as well wrap that up there. Thank you very much you've been on council since, 2013?
Yes.
Yeah, so what's your most favourite achievements? You mentioned Quayside before. Are there anything else that you're quite proud of in terms of what you've achieved here in the 12 years or so?
Yes, I think, look, one of the things when I joined council, I'd have to say that there was a perception or a view from many in the community that the council was hard to deal with. I think with the support of Jane Nees and Paula, our customer focus has changed significantly. We are a regulatory body in a lot of the work we do, and that's always not popular because you're the regulator. But I think as long as people feel that they've been heard with empathy and understanding, then they will ultimately accept the deliberations coming from a regulator. And I think we've done well on that. In terms of our consenting processes, as an example, it's pleasing to see that I think it's a very high number, probably 90% of those people seeking consents in terms of the feedback say that they've been pleased with the engagement and the consideration that the council has given them, which is good. But I said we're a regulator, so we're not always popular. The other one, as I said, is the growth in terms of Quayside and the financial prudence and management that we've had of that vehicle. And as you know, our shareholding in the port and the growth of the port over time, which is delivered through a separate vehicle, but it all accrues to the benefit of the regional council and the wider Bay of Plenty community. So they're just a couple. It's been an enjoyable trip, enjoyed it. And yeah, there's a lot of work to be done in several areas going forward. One of the things which is unfinished business is the class action litigation been taken against us as a result of the 2017 flood at Edgecombe. I wish the council well on that. Insurance companies are not your friends at the end of the day. And I think that this particular issue is going to have ramifications for the whole of the local government sector in terms of regional councils to do with flood protections and river management and all those things. Yes, I wish them well in terms of that outcome, but it's going to take a very concerted and considered effort to make sure that whichever pathway they want to follow is in the best interest long-term of ratepayers.
So if I can summarise, it's not, for the next council, it's not plain sailing. There's some big chunky issues, institutional, big game-changing issues that it confronts, and hopefully the people elect people with the right mindset and ability and experience to be able to take on some of these challenges.
You're right. This is not business as usual. There are some big elephants in the room here that are going to have to deal with. We've covered most of them in terms of local government reform, national policy statements getting changed, and then there are the other issues here, as we've just mentioned, in terms of class actions being taken against the regional council, which is a really big one.
Great. Awesome. Thank you very much, Doug. We'll leave it there. Thanks. Cool.